Good evening. Thank you all for giving up some time on a Tuesday night to join us in our webinar. My name is Susie Sarkeesian. I am the Director of Family Services here at the Kensington Assisted Living in White Plains, New York. And I'm happy to host you here tonight. So thank you for coming. Tonight's presentation is called Understanding Specialty Dementias, Symptoms, Communications, Practices, and Resources. So tonight you're going to be hearing from experts on 3 different types of dementias. And we've got some good stuff coming. I think you're gonna get a lot out of this. The 3 different types of dementias that we will be exploring are Lewy Body Dementia, Frontotemporal Dementias, and Vascular Dementia. And we'll be talking about what you can do to best assist people who are coping with these challenges and with these diseases and much more. So before I introduce our speakers to you, I want to tell you a little bit about the Kensington. We are an enhanced assisted living located in White Plains, New York. And we just celebrated our 10th birthday. We opened in September of 2011. And I'm happy to say that I've been here all 10 years. We're committed to providing outstanding care every day with a full spectrum of clinical support, including care for those with Alzheimer's and other dementias. One thing that makes us stand out is that we have 2 levels of memory care. Distinguishing between early to middle stages of cognitive decline and middle to later stages of cognitive decline. We train our caregivers to encourage independence and focusing on helping people to feel important and helping them to feel successful in their daily lives. Our Kensington promise is to love and care for your family as we do our own. So we're bringing you this presentation today because we firmly believe in the value of education and knowledge. And by learning about different dementias and hearing from experts, it can only help us all to help each other as we go through the changes that happen with dementia and learning about other diseases. So if you'd like more information about the Kensington, and ways that we can assist you, you can feel free to call us at 914-390-0080. I feel like a radio guy. And our website is www.thekensingtonwhiteplains.com. At the end of their presentation, you're going to hear from 3 different presenters and a caregiver. We will have a Q&A session, and you can type your questions into the chat box on Zoom. And all attendees will receive a post-event email containing a list of resources as well as contact information for our speakers. So let's get started. Our first presenter tonight is named Corey E Sannison. She is a registered yoga teacher and ambassador with the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, AFTD. Corey is excited to share her personal and professional knowledge on FTD with the community and to build awareness about this rare dementia. So take it away, Corey.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that, little technical difficulties there. Thank you to Susie and the Kensington for hosting this event tonight. And thank you to all of you who are tuning in at home or at work or wherever you might be and taking the time tonight to learn about special dementias that are rare or known. I'm really excited to talk about FTD to you tonight. It's personal for me. My mom had FTD, so I know the journey well. And it's also World FTD Awareness Week. So I'm really excited to be here and share information with you. I'm going to pull up my screen so you guys can hear and see. Give me one sec. So frontotemporal degeneration, if you walk away with anything tonight, please remember that it is not FTD, the floral delivery company. Frontotemporal degeneration, always called FTD for short, represents a group of brain disorders that's caused by damage to the neurons in the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain. So if you're not familiar with brain things, as I was not when my mom was diagnosed, Alzheimer's usually hits the back of the brain, lower part of the brainstem, and frontotemporal hits the frontal and the side, the temporal lobes. It is rare, but it is the most common cause of dementia for those who are diagnosed under the age of 60. FTD is different than other dementias and different than Alzheimer's because it has different symptoms. The symptoms are usually, and not usually, they're always progressive, and they're usually in either language, in movement, or in behavior, and sometimes they're in a combination of both or all three together. The thing that's different from Alzheimer's and other dementias is that memory is usually relatively preserved in those who have FTD, although you might not be aware that it's preserved because those who are having language issues with their executive functioning might not be able to access that memory or speak about it. It always strikes younger. So the average age of onset is anywhere from 45 to 64, although there have been cases documented as young as 21 and as old as 80. It falls under the rare disease category because there are only about 60,000 cases diagnosed in the US. That being said, because the path to diagnosis is so difficult for so many families, the caseload is probably higher than 60,000, but it goes undiagnosed so often. That being said, it is obviously difficult to diagnose. In my mom's case, it took almost 4 years to get a diagnosis, which is actually different towards the end of her disease. But so there is always an average of about 3 to 3.5 years for someone to get a diagnosis, and an accurate diagnosis at that. It is progressive and terminal. So like most other dementias, there is currently no treatment or cure. And the average lifespan for someone diagnosed is 7 to 10 years. FTD is really what I refer to as this kind of perfect storm. It hits people in the prime or the peak of their lives when they are still working. If they have children, they are still caregiving in a heavy capacity. The symptoms are usually look like other things, and it's rare and it's very misunderstood. And so it kind of creates this big perfect storm of issues for both the person who is dealing with the disease, but then also for the family members and all of the other pieces that kind of affect those families. So this is a face of FTD. This is my mom at the age of 55, shortly before we started noticing symptoms. She was a vibrant, tenacious woman who could light up a room and talk to a brick wall if she needed to. And in the course of 10 years, she lost all ability to speak, to walk, to talk, to be the vibrant person that she was. It took us about 4 years to get an accurate diagnosis for her. And then from that point, she lived with the disease for about 9 years. So FTD can look like a lot of different things, and I'm going to briefly kind of breeze over a lot of this. You'll get a follow-up sheet that has resources and more information, so I apologize if it feels like I'm going fast through things. You can always reach out and ask questions in the Q&A as well. So there are lots of signs and symptoms that you might see with someone who is exhibiting behaviors of FTD, and they usually fall into 3 categories. One being behavioral and personality changes, the second being language changes, and the third being motor function. Not everyone shows symptoms in all 3 categories. Some show symptoms in 1, in 2, in 3, but a lot of times what happens is as the disease progresses, people start to kind of morph and have symptoms in the other categories. So you might see things like apathy, loss of empathy, a lot of inappropriate social behavior things that can oftentimes look like, oh, that person is in a bad mood, or they're having a midlife crisis, or maybe they're depressed, or maybe it's anxiety. My mom was convinced at 55 that she had ADHD and needed to get tested for that, but it was not that. So it can look like a lot of different things, changes in eating, changes in just their overall health and how they take care of themselves. If they were once this person who was very into sports and active and leading this very healthy lifestyle, they might become very apathetic to that. They might start eating, they might start spending money kind of inappropriately, lots of different things, but it's usually marked changes in behavior. The second category where things often come up are language changes. It's always progressive, and you might not notice it at first if you don't speak with the person often. The person might be good at kind of masking it, especially if they have a large vocabulary and they're good at kind of, knowing words and keeping everything going, even if they can't find the word that they're looking for. So you might see halting, effortful speech. You might see impaired naming, so calling this pen a pencil or calling it a marker or something else. And word retrieval, so searching for a word but not being able to come up, calling it a thingamabobber. My mom used to do that all the time. Oh, hey, can you pass me that thingamabobber over there? I want to open that door with the doohickey. And she would literally use words like that when she couldn't come up with the words. And then the last category is motor functions. So these are really kind of broad. Some people that have FTD also have ALS. Some people have cortical basal, which creates other motor symptoms. So you can see there's a few different things here that come up. And towards the end of most FTD journeys and FTD diseases, all start to have problems with walking and swallowing and things like that. So motor does come into play, but if motor is the first issue that people see, usually there's a strong connection that it will be FTD and ALS together, sometimes also with Parkinson's. So as I said before, FTD is not just one disorder. FTD is a cluster of complex disorders. You can kind of think about it as this umbrella term. Sometimes FTD is called FTLD, frontotemporal lobar degeneration. Some people also refer to it or have referred to it in the past as Pick's disease, because Alfred Pick was the first person to work and research FTD. So when you get an FTD diagnosis, which can take quite a long time for most families, it usually falls into one of three categories or one of three subcategories. Behavioral variant FTD, language variants, which are known as primary progressive aphasia, semantic variant, and then there's two others, non-fluent, agrogrammatic, and logopenic. And then there are the motor diseases, so cortical basal, progressive supranuclear palsy, and then FTD with ALS combined. Most people usually end up in kind of one category, but as I said, as the disease progresses, you might start to see other things. So my mom really fell into the primary progressive aphasia. She had a major issue with language and being able to hold a conversation and understand a conversation, understand written text, understand a movie and what was happening, different things like that. People who are on the more behavioral scale really tend to have a complete shift in their personality or in their understanding of kind of what is right and wrong. So it might look like, people spending money, opening up credit cards, inappropriate relationships, using things in the house not in the ways that they're supposed to be used. There's lots of different things that you might see along the way. Those people that are having motor issues or movement issues, you're going to see different things, and those tend to fall into the FTD ALS category. So I wanted to share with you a little clip of a video that AFTD has put together just to give you kind of an understanding of the impact that this disease has on caregivers and those going through the disease.
was May 28th of 2008. The doctor has to see me first by myself, and just by the look on his face, I knew it wasn't going to be good news.
The doctor said, you know what, this is the issue. It's frontal lobar degeneration, known as FTD. It's probably, 7 to 10 years. And I said, what do you mean 7 to 10 years? And she said, well, that's the length of the disease. And I said, then what happens? She said, well, she passed away.
And I think I said, no, that's not possible. It's not an option. But that took me 3 full days to realize that my very healthy, vibrant 38-year-old husband was going to die.
I still had hope that there were plenty of good days left ahead for us. Now that we know what it is, we'll confront it, we'll find what medications will work or help, and we've got our answer finally. But then the next thought that crossed my mind was, this is the best day that there's going to be with him.
Chris has an FTD disease, primary progressive aphasia, and I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in March of this year. Well, what we've come to realize is most people with brain diseases rarely get diagnosed on a timely basis. And all the excuses were the same. Well, we thought he was stressed. We thought he was tired. We thought it was old age. We thought he couldn't hear as well. We thought he couldn't see as well. Yada, 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 yada. We thought. And then you find out that in all the time that you thought that, the precious time of life, or what remained of your precious life, slipped away like water through your fingers. And boy, would we like to play a role in changing that.
Sorry, having some technical difficulties. Okay, sorry. I'm not pulling up my next screen, so I apologize. So that amazing video was done by Joe Becker for AFTD, and I hope that it gives you a little bit more of an insight into what it might be like to deal with this diagnosis. As I always said to friends, family members, therapists, to me, FTD was this perfect storm that came in and not only affected my mom, but affected everyone in our family, everyone that we knew in ways that we were not expected, in ways that we never could have expected. And as a mom, you know, they always tell you, make sure you rip off your kids' Band-Aids really fast. Well, FTD is like the complete opposite of that. It just kind of peels off the Band-Aid as slow as you possibly could think about it for most family members and most of those going through the disease. But AFTD's mission is to drive research to find a cure and to be able to support the community as best as they possibly can. That being said, there are lots of resources that are available to caregivers and to persons diagnosed. I am going to stop my share for a second and see if I can re-pull up the resource. So give me just 1 second. I apologize. Nope, that didn't work. So I apologize. There are lots of resources available from AFTD. I'm working on trying to pull up the slide for you. But the AFTD has a helpline. It is staffed every single day. It is not for emergencies, but you can call the helpline. You can speak with a live person between the hours of 9 to 5. That number will go up on the last slide that the Kensington shares with you today, as is my contact information. The website has lots of resources that you can delve into. There are support groups all across the country. There are also telephone support groups. Currently, there are lots of Zoom support groups because we know the pandemic has affected people in ways that they haven't been able to access resources. So AFTD kind of took that whole program online. There are also research trials that you can learn about, that you can get involved in. There are ways to volunteer and build awareness, such as the work I'm doing tonight. And then there are also supports for the caregivers and persons diagnosed. There are Comstock Grants that AFTD has available, and you can apply, and those grants are awarded continually throughout the year. If I can pull up the slide again, I will do my best, but I apologize for the technical difficulties at the moment. So thank you all for listening in, for learning, and for sharing. And please remember that FTD is not the floral delivery company, but it is frontotemporal degeneration. And I look forward to any questions everyone has. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Corey, especially for sharing the personal story and seeing your beautiful, beautiful mother. It really takes it to another level when it's personal like that. And I applaud you for all the work that you're doing to get the word out there about FTD, and know that resources will all be sent to participants in this webinar by email later. So it will get out there to them. Okay. Wow, that was powerful, right? So on to our next one, Jennifer Reeder. Jennifer is a licensed clinical social worker with the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, also called AFA. She is the Director of Education and Social Services, and she oversees the AFA's National Toll-Free Helpline. And I think Jennifer is going to be educating us on vascular dementias as well. So thank you, Jennifer. Can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much. Yes, so I am from the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, and I will be talking about vascular dementia this evening, because although we are called the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, we do support and educate all people who have been affected by any type of dementia. So I am going to share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint for you all. So before I get into vascular dementia, I do want to share with you a beautiful, amazing song by Michael Albanese. So Michael is a member of one of our support groups, and he is an amazing songwriter, and you will find that to be very true when you hear his song. So I had asked how he would like me to introduce his song, which is called My Way Home. And this is what he stated. So he stated, with regards to this song, I think it would be interesting to note that it was inspired by a comment from the support group that I attend at AFA. I was talking about how my wife would tell me how she loved memories that she had with Michael, even though I was in the room with her. The comment that I could take comfort from the comment was that I could take comfort from the fact that she still loved me, even though she didn't recognize me. Another inspiration was when my wife told me, "Sometimes I know who you are by the way you hold my hand." Both things are represented in the song. I also tried to communicate the experience of a caregiver with the frustration and possible anger as a loved one progresses through the disease, and ultimately the fact that my wife, the love that I have for my wife, is what makes it possible for me to continue caring for her. So now I'll play the song.
Failure and forgiveness, well, that wheel goes round and round. Anger and compassion, listening for silence in the sound. Give me strength in my weakness. Bring the dawn in from the dark. Sing to me in your sadness. Dance with me in our joy. Beat of my heart will bear witness. Listen to the rhythm, soft and low. With your heart shining brightly, I will always find my way home. Touch of my hand sends a message. You know that I'll always be here. This twilight will not deceive us, even as things start slipping away. Search your hearts and be silent. These ghosts cannot abide. A gone away world's apparition. You still love the memory of me. Beat of my heart will bear witness. Listen to the rhythm, soft and low. Con tu corazón ardiente, I will always find my way home. My heart will bear witness. Listen to the rhythm, soft and low. With your heart shining brightly, I will always find my way home.
Okay, I hope that you all enjoyed that song. It always chokes me up every time I listen to it. But Michael is an amazing songwriter. So thank you so much, Michael, for allowing me to share that song with everyone. Thank you. So, so now I'll be helping you all talk, sorry. So now I'm going to be getting into vascular dementia. And I thought it would be important for me to first start with what a stroke is, because a lot of the times vascular dementia occurs due to a stroke. So, so first and foremost, you know, a stroke occurs when a blood vessel is either blocked or by a clot or ruptures, and then the brain, like parts of the brain, begin to die due to lack of oxygen and nutrients. And as I drew this little picture here for all of you, so that you can see that the effects of the stroke depend on the area of the brain that begins to die and what part of the brain the stroke affected the brain. So whether that's in the cerebrum, the cerebellum, or the brain stem. So for instance, the cerebrum, that controls movement, sensation, speech, thinking, reasoning, memory, vision, and emotion. So that's what's going to be affected if the stroke occurs in the cerebrum. And then the cerebellum, and also with the cerebrum too, just you all are aware, there's the right and the left hemisphere. So symptoms will also depend on whether it hits the right or the left hemisphere. And then there's the cerebellum, which is the top and front of the brain. And the cerebellum is responsible for coordinating muscle action and control and fine movement and coordination and balance. This is actually less common for a stroke to happen in this area of the brain, but if it does, it can be very, very severe. And it can lead to people not being able to walk, problems with coordination and balance. And then it can occur in the brainstem as well, which is where vital life support functions actually occur. So that's the heartbeat, blood pressure, breathing, chewing, swallowing. So unfortunately, if it happens there, it can very easily move to a coma or unfortunately death. So how is vascular dementia related to a stroke? So vascular dementia is a general term describing problems with reasoning, planning, judgment, memory, and other thought processes caused by brain damage from impaired blood flow to the brain. So that means the brain's not getting those nutrients. And vascular dementia is not always developed after a stroke. That's really important to note. About 1 in 4 people who have a stroke will then develop vascular dementia, usually within the first 6 months or so. And vascular dementia is the second most common type of dementia after Alzheimer's disease. About 20% of dementia cases is vascular disease. And it does have similar risk factors to a stroke, which is diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and smoking cigarettes. That's a big one. My grandmother, she actually had vascular dementia after a stroke, and she was a very, very healthy woman, but she smoked cigarettes all the time. And so, you know, my assumption is that, and I think the doctors as well, was that it had a lot to do with smoking cigarettes, even though she ate a very healthy diet, exercised all the time. But certain conditions that can lead to vascular dementia is a stroke, as I mentioned. So that's one large stroke or multiple smaller strokes, a brain hemorrhage, or narrowed or chronically damaged brain blood vessels as well. And there are different types of vascular dementia. So there's single infarct dementia. That's when the vascular dementia typically occurs after one large stroke. Then there's multi-infarct dementia. So that's when somebody may have multiple smaller strokes, which causes tiny spots of damage throughout the brain. And unfortunately for someone, if someone has a stroke, then they're more at risk for having another stroke. And the more strokes you have, the more at risk you are of developing vascular dementia. Then there's subcortical dementia as well. This is caused by small vessel disease, which occurs when vessels deep in the brain become blocked as a result of a stroke. And then there's mixed dementia. So mixed dementia, this is when someone typically has vascular dementia and Alzheimer's disease. That's the most common type of mixed dementia. And you'll see here with the symptoms of vascular dementia. So there are a lot of like cognitive symptoms connected to vascular dementia, as you can see here. And a lot of those cognitive symptoms are kind of similar to Alzheimer's disease, except that the person's personality and emotional responsiveness with vascular dementia tends to remain intact, unlike Alzheimer's disease, where there are a lot of personality changes and behavior changes that can occur, not always, but pretty often. It's more so mood that is affected by vascular dementia, such as irritability, loss of interest, restlessness, agitation. And a lot of this is connected to the cognitive symptoms that someone is experiencing. And then these are the risk factors. I already mentioned some of them, but it's just important to know diabetes, obesity, smoking, high blood pressure. All of these are things that we can take steps to hopefully prevent in some ways from a stroke happening that can lead to vascular dementia. Because we always have to remember that brain health is not just brain health by itself. The brain is connected to the body. So when we think about body health, it's also the brain. Everything is connected. So what to do if you have vascular dementia? So treating the conditions that's affecting the vascular dementia, and your heart, especially for your heart and blood vessels, that's all really important to be able to keep up and start to really address. So this is why medical professionals may prescribe medications to lower blood pressure, reduce cholesterol, anything to help to prevent further decline. Controlling blood sugar is so very important, connected to diabetes. And then managing cognitive symptoms. So there isn't any medication that's out there specifically for vascular dementia. But with the cognitive symptoms, Alzheimer's disease, a lot of the times there are cognitive enhancing medications that are prescribed for Alzheimer's. They'll also be prescribed for vascular dementia too, for those cognitive symptoms that I talked about. And then how to cope with vascular dementia. So, we're thinking about the person. So for memory problems, you can help to create a list or take notes and establish a daily routine. Because we have to remember that thinking clearly starts to decline when someone has vascular dementia. So it may be really difficult for the individual to experience new situations, excessive noise, large groups, being rushed to remember things. Complicated tasks can also cause anxiety. So we just have to keep that in mind. And although a lot of the times memory isn't necessarily impacted immediately, it can likely be impacted later on. Although I have to say my grandmother, her memory remained intact pretty much the entire time that she was alive after the stroke and developing vascular dementia. I was blown away by that because of the condition that she was in before she died, but she remembered me right off the bat as soon as I came into the room. So it depends, it varies from person to person. But so, as the person talking with a professional to manage emotional symptoms and depression, working with an occupational and physical therapist, because it's really important, to be able to regain as much independence as you possibly can. A speech therapist to help with communication and language skills, and exploring the option of a power of attorney and living will. I think that's always important because at any point, when you have any type of dementia, most types are progressive. So things are gonna continue to progressively get worse. So while you're able to make decisions, it's good to know who you want to help make your decisions when you're not able to later on. And then for the family caregiver, educating yourself, just like you're doing this evening, taking care of yourself. It's impossible to take care of anyone if you're not taking care of yourself. And I understand that it's so much easier said than done. seeking support, whether that's professional support or a social network, friends, support groups, whatever it may be, providing a calm and supportive environment for your loved one. Ensuring daily routines include comforting and enjoyable activities, and listening and reassuring and maintaining your loved one's dignity and respect. I don't think that that's necessarily something I have to tell you all, but just something I like to highlight and make be known that it's so important to keep a loved one's dignity and respect intact. And then finally, just prevention. So these are things that you can do to prevent vascular dementia from happening. So, or at least developing a stroke as well. So quitting smoking, number one, regular exercise, keeping your cholesterol in check, preventing or controlling diabetes if you have it, maintaining a healthy blood pressure, and regularly talking with your doctor. So that is it for my presentation. And, please do feel that you can ask any questions. We'll get to those at the very end. We do have a ton of resources that we will be sharing with all of you, which includes our nationwide helpline that's staffed by all licensed social workers. So thank you all.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate you sharing that and the reminder of the differences between vascular dementia and Alzheimer's is important to remember. So lastly, we're going to go to Norma Loeb, and she's the founder and executive director of the Lewy Body Dementia Resource Center of New York. Norma's been facilitating the New York metro area LBD support groups since 2008. She served on the board of the directors for the Lewy Body Dementia Association for 3 years before launching LBDRC to provide much needed resources on personal and local levels. Norma also has a surprise guest for us, a caregiver. So Norma, jump right in.
No. Norma needs to.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, I'll jump right in here. I know it's running a little bit late. I am founder of the Lewy Body Dementia Resource Center because I got involved because my mom had the disease and she had it for 18 long years, which is not the norm. And she lived with me for the last 7 years of her life and she was bedridden. So I know the disease and we were very close from the very beginning of when she couldn't do her checkbook until literally till her last moment here. The mission of my organization is to bring as much awareness as possible to this disease and to bring love and support to all of the caregivers and families because it is so unknown. Though most of you had probably never heard of Lewy body, please know that yes, it's categorized here as a special dementia, but it is by no means rare. 1.4 million Americans are said to have Lewy body, and we think that is underestimated by far because it's usually misdiagnosed. It is the second most common form of progressive dementia after Alzheimer's disease. And what I mean by that is this disease, differently from vascular, starts out very slowly and then progresses over the years. So when I say it's the second most common and not unknown, if you thought about other diseases that you've heard of, like ALS and muscular dystrophy and cerebral palsy, there are more people with Lewy body than have all three of those diseases combined. It's a disease that some of you may have heard of because it's the disease that Robin Williams had. The thing is, though, he never knew that he had it, and it was only found out after autopsy. If it is caused by an insufficient amount of dopamine to the brain and is very closely aligned to Parkinson's. So I'd like to tell you about the symptoms, which are many. And I don't have a PowerPoint to put up, so I'm going to list them slowly because I think sometimes This list would be way too long. The first thing to know is that there are issues with cognition, as with all of the dementias, and not necessarily memory from the very beginning. Problems with executive function, knowing how to do a checkbook, knowing how to use a remote control. Anything that is multitasking or problem solving is what happens first. In conjunction with those, most people who have Lewy body dementia have Parkinson's symptoms. And I'd like to explain them because so many people think they will automatically say that means when your hand is shaking. Well, someone can have a tremor, but many people with Lewy body don't have a tremor. But what Parkinson's looks like is having this slow movement. There's a shuffling walk. There's rigidity in the arms and legs, and it ends up affecting every muscle. So in addition to having cognition problems and Parkinson's symptoms, people with Lewy body tend to have hallucinations. Extremely common to have hallucinations of children and small animals. But many other people have very frightening hallucinations, and I'll talk about that in a moment. In addition to that, there is a Rem Sleep Disorder, generally, where people are acting out their dreams. So most of the time when we dream, if you're running in your dream, you're not running in your bed, but people who have a Rem sleep disorder are thrashing in their sleep and can hit the person next to them. That's an early symptom of it. In addition to that, there are fluctuations. This is key. It's really important to distinguish from all the other dementias, because if someone has fluctuations, and what I mean by that is they may be able to have a full conversation to you about what's going on today, and then later that day, or it could be a few days later, are having difficulty getting out a sentence or two, and it varies from day to day. That's a fluctuation. It's almost as if there's difficulty on one day, it can be for days of having difficulty speaking. And then third or fourth day, it's like a light switch went on and there's clarity, and you say, oh, that person is there. That is a hallmark symptom of Lewy body versus everything else. There are also many other signs, symptoms of Lewy body. One is visual spatial, where there's a problem with depth perception, where someone may reach for a glass in front of them, but it's to the right. Actually, they may hit a curb. There are problems with the autonomic system. Constipation is an early sign with many other things. So is depression, anxiety, apathy. But the most important thing, so what I want to tell you, 3 important things. If someone has Parkinson's disease and then develops cognition issues within a year or 2 or 3, even up to 5, they call that Parkinson's disease dementia, but it comes under the same heading as dementia with Lewy bodies. It really is the same disease. Most people who have just Parkinson's can go on for 20 years or more without any cognition issues. So why is it so important to be diagnosed correctly? There, unfortunately, is no cure for any of the diseases we've talked about tonight or for Parkinson's. It's because people with Lewy body dementia are extremely sensitive to medications, and the wrong ones can make them much worse. If they are given, same thing that happened to Robin Williams. He was misdiagnosed with just Parkinson's and with other issues. And particularly when people are having very frightening hallucinations and need medications and they're given antipsychotics, if they're giving some of the older antipsychotics, and I will mention one, even though I don't have a medical background, because no one with Lewy body should be given it, is Haldol, which is an older antipsychotic. It can put them into a coma, make them much worse. And many other medications don't agree with them as well, including over-the-counter meds like Benadryl. So please, that is one of the most important things to do. And why is it so hard to diagnose? It's because these symptoms are difficult to see in a doctor's office. You're not going to see the Rem sleep disorder. You're not going to see the hallucinations in the office. You won't notice the fluctuations. So it's really important for caregivers to go with a list of history for the doctor. A good doctor, a neurologist. A neurologist are the people who can diagnose all of these diseases, should be asking all those questions as well. And that's why it's so hard. That's why I formed the organization. Is there is such a high level of caregiver burden with all of these diseases. And particularly, I'll speak what I know from with my mom and for all the support groups I've been leading for almost 14 years, is that you don't, besides having the cognition issues, they have all the physical issues, and then you don't know from day to day what's going to happen because of the fluctuations. And that's why we have support groups, and the only live helpline in the United States for this disease. And we're bringing attention every day to do as much as we can for it. I think that's basically what I'd like you all to know. And in order to give time so that I know you have questions, we have caregiver Pamela Rosenbloom, who is currently caring for her husband who has Lewy body, and she'll speak to you for a few minutes on what it's like right now for her. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Let me just pull up my presentation. My name is Pamela Rosenbloom, and I'm really pleased to be able to speak for a few minutes here from the caregiver's point of view. My husband was first diagnosed with Lewy Body Dementia 5 years ago, but I can say that my caregiver journey started in increments years before. I'm hoping in this brief talk to elucidate why Lewy body caregivers may suffer from a particular kind of overwhelm and stress. Since Lewy body dementia doesn't necessarily start with memory loss, and it affects the entire autonomic nervous system, there can be a wide range of early manifestations that don't necessarily make you run to a neurologist. Caregivers often speak of going from specialist to specialist, trying to figure out what's going on with their loved one. In our case, we chased my husband's symptom of dizziness, or what he called wooziness, from doctor to various physical therapists and through many different diagnoses, all to no avail. He also had occasional Rem Sleep Disorder 2 decades before his diagnosis. And he had what I now know in hindsight were classic visual processing distortions 10 years before his diagnosis. These distortions caused him to fear driving faster than 25 miles an hour, and he was terrified that he was going to fall down the flight of stairs or fall off the side of a 20-foot wide walkway. He had no way to understand or explain that he was actually seeing things inaccurately, and he thought he had developed a psychological phobia. So there was no clue that he was actually suffering from visual processing problems until other symptoms, Parkinson's type symptoms, became dramatic enough for us to go to a movement disorder neurologist who recognized the Lewy body dementia. And it's often the movement disorder neurologist who knows this disease. I mentioned all of these things to say that by the time a person gets a Lewy body diagnosis and begins to learn about the disease, the partner, the spouse, the child, whoever is living with or becoming the caregiver may already be stressed for a very long time by the search for what is happening. Throughout the course of this illness, also, the caregiver can feel that she's playing a constant game of whack-a-mole as different Lewy body manifestations occur, often fluctuating, as Norma said, within the course of a day or even within a few hours. This leads to a kind of hypervigilance on the caregiver's part, which takes its toll, making it difficult to relax and to sleep well. I have had to steel myself each morning before rising, never knowing just what or even who I'm going to encounter. And the many, what I would call uncanny aspects of some Lewy body manifestations, such as Capgras syndrome or paranoid delusions and hallucinations, are emotionally overwhelming to deal with. In addition to dealing with all the ways this dementia can manifest in a person, some caregivers, though not all, will also be helping manage the person's Parkinsonian symptoms. And as those symptoms progress, the stress on the caregiver includes not just emotional and relational stress, but literally physical stress of helping their loved one shower, toilet, get in and out of bed, etc. So now, as I move toward the end of my caregiver journey with my husband, who is now in a skilled nursing facility and in hospice care, I look back and I wonder if there was anything I could have done differently. It's hard to say. Perhaps I could have gotten help sooner, but the day-to-day care was often so exhausting that the idea of figuring out how to get help felt overwhelming. So I take care of myself with a regular spiritual practice, a meditation and Qigong practice, and I take time to be with friends and have people whose shoulders I can literally cry on. I especially would encourage any caregiver to find a support group, preferably one of Lewy body caregivers, to connect and share their experiences and their fears, and yes, even the laughter that you can share with your fellow travelers. Even though this illness affects each person differently, the underlying commonality and the sense of feeling understood by others is invaluable. So I thank you all for listening and for your interest. And I wish anyone on this journey or any journey with any of these dementias to get the help and support you need. Thank you.
And thank you, Pamela, for sharing your story about your husband. And I'm sure you did a bang up job taking care of him. So, and it sounds like you're taking care of yourself too. So I really appreciate that. And Norma, for the education on Lewy body, I too, you know, it hits home with me. My dad had Lewy body also. So I know we all, pretty much everyone here can raise their hand because they have a first generation experience with a dementia.
Right.
So now we're going to go into a quick, I know we've gone a little bit over, we're going to do a quick question and Q&A, question and answer session. Sorry. That was reminding you we went over a quick question and answer session. And we have a few questions out there. So the first one we have says, how do you differentiate between Lewy body and PDD? Other than the greater sensitivity to certain meds with Lewy body, are the two dementias treated differently? So Parkinson's and Lewy body.
Okay, thank you. They are treated well. It really, there are a lot of factors there. There are many similarities. It really depends on how long someone has had Parkinson's. As I was mentioning before, have they had it for many, many years, like 10, 15 years, and then all of a sudden developed dementia issues? There are many similarities. It's on the same spectrum. So other than, I think the question was on how else to treat it other than the sensitivity. I can just tell you that people who have Lewy body, at least 50% can't take Parkinson's meds because they would affect them adversely. But people who have Parkinson's generally don't have that issue. I don't know if that answered it completely. Can you repeat the last sentence just so I answer it right?
If I can, no, I can't.
Okay, no problem.
Oh, wait,
Somebody
here.
can ask again,
Sorry.
and please, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call the helpline. I just want everyone to know it's 833 LBD line is the easiest way, and you'll see it at the end.
Great. And I think we'll go with one more question. Someone wrote in that they want to know if there's genetic testing. This is for you, Corey. Is there genetic testing for frontotemporal dementia because their aunt has it?
Yes. So there is genetic testing. Genetic testing, as many of you know, with all the dementias, is kind of like a Pandora's box. Once you open it, there are lots of avenues. There are lots of things that you kind of have to take into consideration, but you can do genetic testing for FTD. It does help when the person who is diagnosed, the loved one, the person who has the disease, has already themselves been tested genetically, because then your genetic testing makes more sense if you know what they were dealing with. So the best thing to do is to seek out a genetic counselor. Most of the FTD sites that are on our website, neurological sites that are on their websites, have genetic counselors connected to them, and you can reach out. The great thing to know about genetic counseling is that you can go and get genetic counseling and then decide that you don't actually want to do the testing. So I just think that's always really important for people to know. You can go, you can see a genetic counselor, you can ask all the questions you want, and then you can decide if you do or you don't want to
proceed.
Yeah.
I have one more that just came in, and it's asking about alcoholism being related to any of these dementias that have been presented tonight. I know we haven't focused in exactly on alcohol-related dementia, but does anyone have a connection to their particular type of dementia and alcoholism that they want to share?
I think just as there are other dementias other than the ones we mentioned, I don't know if Jennifer might say something with that. There's no specific, no, I would say no for Lewy body, and alcohol-related dementia is kind of in a space by itself, my understanding is.
Okay.
Yeah, alcohol can definitely be a risk factor definitely for Alzheimer's disease and also for vascular dementia too. It's really important to consider your intake of alcohol. Absolutely.
Okay.
But yeah, there is a completely separate alcohol.
Yeah, we didn't quite cover that one, but oh my gosh, we're getting great questions. If people want to hang around, I'll put them out there. This one says, my husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's when he was 39 after 2 years of symptoms. He had hallucinations, but always told that he had them due to the meds. Is that possible? Years later, he was diagnosed with Lewy body. Forward another 9 years, he now still alive after 30 years. He was told he never had it. Does that make any sense? So
I can tell you, I've been doing this for many, many years, and I've never heard that before. I am going to assume the person who has lived how many years? Did you say 30?
well, this sounded like the first thing was at 39, and then 30 more years later. I mean, it sounds like
was it 30 years? I think I'm going to think that's inaccurate, what was typed, because they didn't even know about Lewy body 30 years ago.
right. It just became a diagnosis.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm not getting the 30 years in total with PD. Wow. No, so that's extremely rare for someone with Lewy body to live that long. And hallucinations can be a big part of Parkinson's disease as well. So I would think that it wasn't. But again, I just want everyone to know I don't have a medical background, but in my experience from talking to probably thousands of people, I never heard it before.
Yeah. Okay. Should we do one more? Oh,
yes, sure.
Oh, why not? So this one says, how do you differentiate? Wait, I already did that one. Someone wrote in who works, an activity director at a long-term, short-term facility. What do you suggest I do for a resident with Lewy body, or actually this could go to any dementia, when redirecting isn't working? And redirecting is a technique that we use in communities for working with residents with a dementia, but they're asking for concrete suggestions on what to do when redirecting is not working.
My quick answer, and I'll let others respond, is to really know that particular person. It all depends on the individual, on what their likes were when you know them personally. So say, for instance, they love dogs. So I know redirecting, you may be showing them something with dogs, but I would try to do that. Again, I don't know how many things you're doing to redirect, but are you taking them to a different room? Are you
Right.
having someone speak to them on a telephone? Are you making sure that, can you go outside with them? Are you showing pictures of an animal? You have to really try so many things. And as I think we all know, and as you know, as a recreation director, they won't work all the time, but many times they will. And the only thing you can do is to try. I don't have another answer for that.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other
I
thing
would
they
just
want
like to add that I think it's important too to be present with the person too, because we all want to feel heard. And, when somebody's having a delusion or a hallucination, you don't want to just, I don't think you just want to redirect the person, but you want to first try to understand what it is they're experiencing, and so that they can feel like you're there as a support, and then try to redirect them. I think it's, important to first be present in the moment with them before trying all these different redirecting, because I think that we just want to get people to feel better. But sometimes feeling better means just sitting with them and allowing them to talk for a minute.
validating, right?
Absolutely. And if I can just add to that, it's
Okay.
to let them, you have to go. Let them feel in control, no matter what you
Yes,
do, no matter what you
absolutely.
need to do. Really important.
So you all have so much to share and people are sending in wonderful questions, but I have to be a party pooper and wrap this up. So thank you to everyone who showed up tonight. Like I said, I think you're all the people who registered are going to receive an email with some resources. On this screen, you can see helpline numbers and email addresses. And thank you. Thank you for taking time. Thank you for listening and sharing personal stories. We're all in this together, right? Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Good
much.
night.
Bye.
Thank you.